and welcome to Olosa Fumar Takes. This is our 243rd take, live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star studio of Azle, Texas. I'm your host, Bear Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be a fantastic show, a show I've been looking forward to for an awful long time, with one of the league's most underrated players of all time. What league am I talking about? You'll have to find out soon enough, but one of the cigar industry's up-and-coming preeminent people. I am so excited. I absolutely love this man's cigar. We've talked about it in the last few weeks with my top 10 show. I'm done enough teasing, so let's get off to introductions. But before we get to formal introductions, we do have to thank the people that make the show possible. Of course, that's tonight's show's sponsors, and tonight's show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Drew Estate has introduced recently the innovative new concept, the Acid Variety 3-pack. Yes, for those non-traditional cigar smokers, your opportunity is here. The Acid Variety pack is a 3-pack of acid cigars that has a undercrown shade available for the traditional cigar smoker. So if you are a non-traditional cigar smoker and want to experiment with traditional cigars, or a traditional cigar smoker who wants to experiment with non-traditional cigars, the Acid Variety is for you. So for the price of 2 Acid Cubas, purchasers receive 3 cigars with a free undercrown shade cigar included in the pack. Check these out at your Drew Diplomat retailer today. The Acid Variety, for those who love the best of both worlds. And welcome, everyone. This is our 243rd take. Without further ado, with no more further delay, sponsored by United Cigar. Smoke one today and start living United. Tonight's guest is Ken Hamlin of The Arrival. You have arrived, sir. Welcome.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Ken. I've been waiting for this. I've been playing with the introduction in my head, because I have a normal introduction that I do, and I was like, how do I incorporate The Arrival? He's arrived. I hope I did you justice. I'm not.
Oh, you did. And the excitement, the level of I mean, it was all there. So I'm cool with it, and we are arriving right now in this moment for sure.
Fantastic. I'm so excited to get started tonight. The energy is only going to go up because I'm drinking coffee tonight. So I wanted to kick things off here with while I bring up tonight's cigar pairing from down here. I've got a box of your cigars, The Arrival here. Well, what's left of them. I've smoked quite a few of them. This is the Robusto box here. And I'll be smoking one of these tonight. But this was the cigar that was the number 9 cigar in my top 10 list last year, the Robusto, The Arrival. So I've smoked through quite a few of these and everything. But before we kind of talked a little bit about this, I did want to ask you, this was something interesting I found out about you. You were, I know you live in Houston now, as we talked about before the show. You grew up in Memphis, which we'll get into later. But you were born in Germany.
Born in Germany.
So you're actually just from all over the place, huh?
Oh, a little bit everywhere. You know, Army kid. Actually, 2 out of 4 of my siblings, we were all born. Well, 2 of us were born in Germany at different times, and then everyone else was born in different cities. So none of us were born in the same city. My older brother was born in Frankfurt. I was born in Wiesbaden. So and at different times as well, because I got a brother that's in between the 2 of us. So we have bounced around quite a bit. Yeah. So got 2 of us born in the States, 2 of us born out of the country. But yeah, so it was exciting. Definitely a different type of growing up in early days.
So I heard you were there to your about your 5th or 6th birthday, is that right?
Say again?
You were in Germany till you're about 4, 5, 6 years old, something like that?
About 5 years old, yeah.
Okay. We were talking a little bit about this before the show, so that means that because we're about the same age, you're just a little bit older than me. I'm going to be turning 40. My wife's older than me, though. She's closer to your age, and she was born in Germany as well. She was born in Landstuhl, so you guys were probably there at the same time, which is kind of crazy.
Exactly. No, yeah. I mean, to think about those early days. I mean, and even with starting school, that's when once I got into school, we started to, really learn a little bit of German, and sort of had to bring that home. And that was like our homework of trying to learn more German, even though I was a U.S. citizen, but they still incorporated that into early early stages of school. And I still can remember little bitty things about, just being there, but it definitely was an experience.
It's awesome. Do you, I mean, did you retain any German, or is it that was long gone?
Guten Morgen and Guten Tag. That's all I can give you. That's about it. That's about it. That's about it. I didn't retain much of any of it.
I know you were just down in the Dominican for Pro Cigar. Have you been to Intertabac over in Germany?
I have not yet, and
Okay.
I actually plan on getting out there. I planned on getting out there a couple of years ago. Of course, COVID hit and sort of messed up everybody's plans for the last couple of years. So those plans are getting back into action to where I can get back out there. And actually, that plan, I'll be in Switzerland at the end of this month. So
Oh,
it's going to
okay.
be interesting. Yeah, I got some interesting things happening. So it should be good.
Well, awesome. Fantastic. I mean, and you've traveled all over for your previous career and then also growing up too. So it was interesting to me, to be that you've called the same place home for the last 20 years, which still blew my mind that it's been 20 years since your league debut. I know it.
It's
I
been
know it
20
up
years.
here. I know it up here.
Oh yeah.
I just never did the math until like just a few minutes ago when we were talking before we went live. I was like, oh my gosh, it has been 20 years. So you
It
live in
doesn't
Houston now.
feel
So
Yeah, it doesn't feel real. Like I look at it, I'm like, okay, I've been here. And the crazy part is I've been in this house for 20 years. So like I really start to think like, I mean, wow, like time is really flying by. Because it didn't feel like 20, but when you start putting the dates together and I think about, well, this year, next month is when I got drafted. That's crazy, 20 years ago.
unbelievable. Well, we're going to dive into
Yeah.
all of that and a little bit more here. So tonight's major point is always brought to you by the people. Yes, cigar people, people who know everything about a lifetime of service. Protocol Cigars is more than just pool parties and good times. Well, maybe it is. But behind the fun is a motivation for service, a motivation for giving back. From the original Protocol Blue to the latest release in the Lawman series, Phoebe Cousins, Protocol has always been about honor, passion, and yes, the people. It's what their life's work has been and always will be about. Power of the P Protocol Cigars. So Ken, I'm obviously smoking the Robusto, the cigar that we talked a little bit about here at the top. But I wanted
Yes,
to
sir.
dive a little bit. This is your first cigar, and I was thinking about this when I first heard about the arrival. I guess pre-arrival, to be a little punny. Before it came onto the market. I promise that's the last time I'll do that. But uh, um, and I heard it was your cigar. I heard you were the person behind it. This is the Ken Hamlin cigar, and I was interested. And then I saw the branding behind it, the arrival, and then produced by La
Yeah.
Aurora, and then I thought about it. I don't know, just a few months back and everything. And then I went back and I looked at the box, and your name's not anywhere on it. It's just the arrival. And I'm gonna pull up the box again.
Yeah.
This is one of the most beautiful presentations that's out there, and I'm not just saying this because you're on my show.
Appreciate it.
I'm really impressed by the detail and everything. And I know from previous interviews that you've done, you really got into the whole process of everything. But I mean, I'm sure, like, was this kind of your vision of how you wanted the box to look and everything like this, or did you
It
want
was
something
that was it.
brand?
That was it. I wanted something, and Johnny Oliva is the guy that I worked with, who's at La Aurora. He does a lot of their creating the boxes and different things. And the first time I met him, I went to the meeting and we had an interpreter. That was because he doesn't speak much, if any, English, and I wasn't speaking that much Spanish. And so, probably about the first hour, I was giving him the ideas on what I thought I, wanted it to look like, and the different details that I wanted. And after about an hour, we were in that meeting for about 5 or 6 hours, and because we worked on, everything, box, bands, everything, every type of creative detail on the box with the bands and everything. But after about an hour of being in that meeting, we sort of moved the interpreter out of the way. Like, I understood where he was coming from. He understood what I was coming from. We just got on a vibe, and it went from so far into us like being on the same page that we actually created the whole thought process of what the video, what the reel, what the sort of snapshot would be for the arrival in that same meeting. And we ended up filming it in the studio in Santiago a couple of months after that. So yeah, it really, I mean, I actually enjoyed the entire process. And that's the one thing that I told Guillermo Leon and told Manuel and Noah when I even discussed the possibility of doing, the cigar, was that I wanted to be a part of the entire thing. I didn't want to just have a piece of this or you throw me this and then I'll put my name on this. I wanted to actually be, the decision maker and sort of making decisions and moving with all of the pieces of the creation of the entire cigar, not just this, but everything around it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I really loved I didn't know what to expect when I actually bought a few of the cigars singles, and then when I invested in the first box, I honestly didn't know what to expect. I had not been into a shop in over a year at that time, because of COVID and everything. So I hadn't been able to see it on the shelf or anything. So I bought a box of these, and when it came in the mail, it was a little bit larger than a normal box of cigars would be. And I was like, wait, how many did I buy? And then I opened it up and I was like, oh my gosh. And it's a 25 count box. But I mean, can hold so much more and everything. So talk a little bit about the I guess
the details behind it.
The details inside of it. These are tobacco stems, right?
Stems, yes.
Yeah.
So and like you said earlier, that like my name isn't on the box. I don't have anything like that on the box that's giving you Ken Hamlin, whatever. But I wanted to bring in basically my backstory into the box a little bit. So what I did was with the lid, to bring in sort of that playing time and sort of my football career, cowboy blue with the lid. And that represented Dallas Cowboys and my time there. And then with that tobacco stems and that railing, I wanted to have the cigars looking like they were sitting in a nest, and that was bringing in the Seattle Seahawks and my time with the Seattle Seahawks and having those cigars sitting in what it would look like a nest. And have that representation of Seahawks, the bird's nest. To sort of bring that part in as well. So subtle little things, whatever, that also give you some talking points. Of course, people see that and they're like, why this, or what are you doing with this? And it gives you things to talk about and really discuss and sort of give them a story and just sort of some thoughts and reasons behind why the box has this or that.
Well, it's absolutely gorgeous. And the cigar itself, we were talking about this a little bit before the show. I like to pair cigars. I like smoking cigars on their own too and everything. But what I've really enjoyed about your blend is that it pairs incredibly well with coffee. I'm a big coffee drinker, and it goes incredibly well with coffee. It goes well with bourbon too. But tonight I'm pairing it with coffee. But talk a little bit. So you said you were really involved in the process. We'll talk about how you ended up at La Aurora a little bit later, but just again, focusing on the cigar here, like what, I know you worked really closely with Manuel and Noah, to get the blend just right and everything. This features a Ecuadorian Sumatra wrapper, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And,
as well as the binder, Ecuadorian Sumatra. And then
multinational filler. Yeah, go ahead, sir, please.
Yes. Yeah. In the filler. So in the filler, you have Dominican, Nicaraguan, and Brazilian. Now, initially, so this is sort of, I guess, the reason behind, first off, the Ecuadorian Sumatra wrapper. I probably before I actually got to DR and was really getting involved into actually creating a cigar. A couple of years before that, me and a couple of guys at the shop, we started really paying attention to, you know, what our top 5 cigars were, or you know, what were our go-tos, and you know, I started using some of the apps to sort of look at, okay, what's this cigar, what's the breakdown of this cigar, and I started looking at deeper into why do I like this cigar more than this one, or vice versa, and I saw that majority of the cigars, one of my favorite cigars is the Laid Out by Davidoff. And a couple of other ones that I enjoy. Oya de Nicaragua has the silver that I enjoy.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I started looking at all these cigars, and all of them had an Ecuadorian wrapper on it. And I was like, okay, this something has to be picking up, you know. So
yeah.
So I knew that was going to play a big part in this cigar. I mean, I knew that I wanted to have that to be a piece of the cigar. Initially, it was Ecuadorian wrapper, Brazilian binder, and then had some Dominican Nicaraguan in the filler. And we got to the point where after, you know, you start smoking a little bit of this, change it up, a little bit of this, change it up, a little bit of this. I was like, let's double down with the Ecuadorian. I'm cool with it because that's my go-to. And then putting that Brazilian into the filler, it sort of to me it smoothed out what the Nicaraguan tobacco would do, and it just made that Dominican tobacco even more like aromatic. It gave it more of flavor. And I think it just smoothed it out even because, I mean, you'll smoke it and you'll get a little bit of that pepper and that spice, but then it just smooths out, and I feel like it becomes a cigar that, and this is one reason behind it, whatever, the cigar that, whether it's a beginner or someone who's a light smoker, it won't be too overpowering for them, but at the same time, someone who I would call a tailpipe smoker, that wants just that hard knock, it'll at least keep their attention. It's not going to go crazy into like full Lajero and just give you a whole bunch of just spice and strength and power, but it'll keep their attention enough to where they could still say, you know what, I enjoyed it because it gave me a little bit here and there and it changed up on me.
I think that's what makes this a terrific cigar for your first one out of the gate too, Ken, is because it's so approachable. Like you said, there's so many people, so many different types of smokers can enjoy it. And I really like it too, because if there's so many cigars now on the market, and so like when you put something on the shelf too, like that with the packaging that we talked about, it really captures the attention. So if you're not there, if Ken Hamlin's not there, or you know,
that's
if someone's not, go ahead.
No,
please.
You're about to say no. You're about to that's the reason behind, and not to cut you off, but that's the reason behind being important when I was even thinking about it, the importance of the presentation, because of when you think about it, when you're putting someone on the shelf as a newbie, and you're putting it next to Padron, Davidoff, Fuente, you know, Drew Estate, you know, all of these brands that, you know, people that don't even smoke, but they come in and they were told to grab this cigar, that cigar, right. And that, so that sort of got in their head of, this is what I'm looking for. You need something that's going to stand there and actually draw people's attention at times, where it's like, okay, what is that? You know, I mean, you know, instead of, they know that this is just a regular old wood box and it just has Padron on it, but that's a hell of a cigar. Like, and I know what it is. Now it's something that pops, and now it gives itself a chance for someone to say, you know what, let me try one of those and see what it's about. And then now let the cigar speak for itself. And if you like it, you know, and if you love it, all right, now you can go grab you a couple more and really dive into what it's about and spend that one-on-one time to see what it's really about.
And it doesn't stop there, Ken, even with the label too. Like I know we're kind of getting into like the details, but I mean the devil is in the details, like they say, but they're like
Yeah.
it's the label. I don't know. You're
So
gonna tell
this
me what
is,
it you're gonna tell me what it
yes,
is.
indeed.
It it's it looks like a glass shattering, almost with the gold inlay and then the blue background, which we know is from the Dallas Cowboy the Dallas Cowboy
Yeah.
tribute. Yeah, walk us through
Yeah.
this because I mean it's I
So
mean it pops.
so this sort of gets into the name creation as well, the arrival, as well as so my nickname in football was the Hammer. So that was the initial name, which I wanted it to be. I was going to Spanish version, and the name of the company, the name of the cigar was going to be El Martillo,
Okay.
which means the hammer,
Right.
in Spanish. That was short lived because after about a good a good email of sending it off to the lawyers, they were like, "Yeah, no, that can't happen for this reason, that reason, and a whole bunch of stuff." Most people thought it was because of Padron and the whole little, but it wasn't even Padron. It was a couple other companies that
That probably
that
has the
not
name.
to
Yeah.
say could
Yeah.
could have it could have been an issue. And my whole thing was I'm not going to step into this industry and step on toes. I'd rather come with a clean slate. You know, I've developed in this short period of time some great relationships, and I'm not going to come in here and try to rub the shoulders, rub things the wrong way. So from that, I had to figure out a name that would fit. But with the band, I still wanted to have that play a part. So
Mhm.
that's that hammer that's smashing down on that glass and that's giving that shattering effect.
Wow.
And in that, this is where the name Arrival comes about too, because with my playing experience, whatever, that's how I made my presence felt. Hard hits, on the field and really, being out there playing defense the way that we played defense back in that time. But at the same time, this is what I want my cigar to do, which is the two things that I say that I want to do all the time, whatever, is make an impression and an impact. And that's what I want this cigar to do. That's why I say standing on its own, not Ken Hamlin being there, but standing on its own. I want it to make an impression and an impact. And that's what that sort of it symbolizes well on the band. It symbolizes that impact. And that's an impression that's going to stick and stay. So hopefully when they smoke this cigar, when you all smoke the cigar, that it does have an impact to where you will say, you know what, I'm going to try that again because I need to see what was that note I just got, or what, damn, that was good with this, or I love to smoke this or whatever during this time, or whatever, however you arrive in that moment, that's your moment of arrival. Doesn't matter if it doesn't fit with the next person who smoked it, who enjoyed it a different way. It's your arrival. It's your moment. That's your relationship that you have with this cigar for that however long it takes you to smoke it. But you have arrived in that moment, and that's where that sort of statement comes from. Of you have arrived is that you now you get to kick back whatever and experience and have that experience with this cigar and let it take you wherever you want it to take you.
Yeah, I'll tell you it's the first impression I had with your cigar, we talked about my first impression of opening the box, but when like I told you, I bought some singles ahead of before that, and I had smoked it. And I tell you the impression that I got, it didn't smack me like a hammer, but it was I use this term to describe a lot of cigars that have me in it there. It's a very engaging cigar. So from the moment you light it to the moment that you finish it, there's a lot going on that just kind of captures your attention. You mentioned the aroma a moment ago. That's something that I really got. I know we're going to get in the weeds here a little bit with my experience, but I'll tell you, it has this very unique aroma that I've gotten on a few cigars before, but it's very rare. And it has like this almost this like root beer aroma. I know it sounds kind of weird.
No,
but
I got it. Yeah.
There's this sweet kind of aromatic, like fennel kind of herbaceousness that just comes off of it. It's just very, very enticing. but then the smoke is completely different from that. Like I don't taste root beer on this cigar. You know, there's beautiful baking spices, and I had George Brightman, who was is a renowned cigar aficionado. He worked for Cigar Aficionado for years. He worked for Davidoff for years. He was he's an industry icon. I've been very, very fortunate to develop a friendship with him. Had him on for my top 10 show, and I had given this cigar to him, this and all my other top 10 cigars blind, and he had smoked it, and he's like, and I smoked it ahead of time. He left me some notes, and it was really cool how he talked about your cigar, and he said this is a very, he's like, this is an instant classic. It was a very classic smoking to him. So I was like, I knew when I eventually would have you on the show, would get to say that, and I knew that would
That's
probably
awesome.
be complimentary to you, because it is a lot of ways there's a lot of classic flavors about it, but at the same time it's a very engaging cigar from beginning to end. That's why I've continued to enjoy it so much. Now you went with 3 Vitolas. The
Yes.
Robusto, the Gordo, and now I'm drawing a blank. The Toro, correct?
Grand Toro. Yeah.
Grand Toro. And now I've seen you smoke all 3 of these in various interviews, photos. I've seen you smoke all 3, so I know you smoke all of them. But what if you had a favorite Vitola? Which would it be?
Go to would be the Grand Toro. So especially it's for multiple reasons. First off, because a lot of times I don't ever, you won't catch me sitting my cigar down. I have a close proximity type of relationship with my cigar where it's right here. And I'm constantly either smoking, retroing, taking in the smell. And so because for a longer smoke as well, and I feel like I get a little bit more of the experience with the Grand Toro.
Mm-hmm.
With the Robusto, I feel like I get a little bit more of the. It's not overpowering, like you said earlier. I don't. It's not an overpowering type of spice or strength of the cigar, but I get more on the Robusto, sort of that spice up front, and then it smooths out with the Grand Toro. I feel like I get a balanced of the flavor and the aroma and that
Mm-hmm.
spice throughout the smoke, where it just gives me that full experience. So it's a combination of reasons.
No, I agree with you. The Robusto is a little bit more intense. That's probably why I prefer it over the Grand Toro, which is the 6
Mm-hmm.
by 58, the Toro 5 3/4 by 52, and then this is the 5 by 50 that I'm smoking. But
Yeah.
what I remember from smoking the Grand Toro a couple of times that I really liked the coolness of the smoke. Not that the Robusto is hot by any stretch, but the
Oh
smoke
yeah.
is very cool. And it's interesting the way you describe how you smoke a cigar. This is going to sound really weird. Like I'm trying. I apologize. I'm not trying to be creepy, but I watched an interview with you. I watched an interview that you did, where you're talking about a number of things, but you know, you obviously talking about the arrival as well. And you were smoking, I presumably a Grand Toro, because it was a little bit larger in hand. But I was listening to you and I was watching the video, and you were, at first I thought you were like me, which I fiddle with a lot of things. Like I have a lot of things here on my table that, you know, like my cutter or something that I'll play with in my hand or something like that. At first I thought you were you fiddled like I did, but I noticed that it was very much a more relationship with the cigar. You were holding it and you were moving it around in your hands a little bit. You
Yeah.
were looking at it, smoking it, smelling the aroma as you were talking, and it was almost I'm sure it was unconscious to you or subconscious to
Yeah.
you. Like it just, but it was, I know what you're talking about. Now that you say it out loud, I'm like, oh, that totally makes sense now. That kind of clicks a little bit.
Because a lot of times, especially when you're in like small groups or even bigger groups, and you're smoking cigars, the cigar can sort of get lost in the shuffle of the communication and the different things going on around. And I think that's sort of still a way to keep this as a part of it, to still have that smell, to still sort of make sure that you still have that one-on-one, even though there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on. Even with an interview or whatever, of being interactive, with the interview, but still being able to have that sort of time with the cigar to where you can still be able to get that enjoyment that you would want to get if you were just you and a cigar. If it was just me and a cigar back here, and I can focus on it, I still want to get a little bit of that, even though I might have other stuff going on.
I'll tell you, there's two impressive things. Impressive by your stretch, and impressive, of course, with who makes your cigar too, is you did a lot of talking during that interview, and either it was the way it was cut or just the way it just happened. But I didn't see you actually puffing on it terribly too much, but it stayed lit the whole time. And I was like, is he going to puff on that cigar at any point? And then you would, and then it was still puffing. You never had to relight it. And then of course the nerd, that's the cigar nerd in me, I went back and I smoked I didn't have the Grand Tour. I had a Toro though. I didn't smoke a Robusto. Yeah. And I was like, okay. And I literally went back and smoked that cigar. I lit it, smoked it for a couple minutes, and I'd let it sit for like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I did 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and 4 minutes between puffs. And it stayed lit the whole time. I was like, oh my God, I would impressive.
Say that's a lot to do. That's a lot to do with, the tobacco first.
Of course, yeah.
But then of course the rollers at La Aurora, to know what they're doing it's up here now with them, and to watch them roll the cigar and see how it's just unconscious or whatever. Now it's just, okay, I know what I'm putting in his hand. I know what I'm doing. It's just going. I actually, with the first, the first 30 cigars, the arrival that were ever rolled, I was tasked to roll the first 30. And so I get down, I'm sitting at the table, and I'm, after getting my hand slapped by one of the rollers probably about 20 or 30 times, and getting through about 5 of the cigars, which they probably would have done 5 in 3 minutes or 4 minutes, I did 5 in probably like 45 minutes. So out of the 30, I think I did 5 of them, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and let the professionals do it. But the respect that I have for them and how they roll, and the compliments that I get from just individuals when they're smoking a cigar and they're like, look at that, look at how they ash, look at how it's staying, like you said, staying lit, the structure of it, the draw, the draw is one thing that I get. People are constantly saying whatever them. This has a impeccable draw, and that it's all credit to the guys and women in that office, that room, that are rolling these cigars, and knowing, and this goes play back to what we'll talk about whenever you said later on about just the decision on going with La Aurora is that's one of the pieces of the knowledge and the experience that they have that plays a part.
Yeah, a lot of it obviously is definitely skill in the making of the cigar and stuff, but it's also, it goes into like the blending too, with Manuel Noah, to put these cigars, these tobaccos together the way that they're expertly rolled, and then for it to be able to hold a light for that long is just just really, really terrific.
The Q&As that me and Manny would have, this was a great experience, but this was a learning experience on the run for me too. Because we sat in the office numerous times, numerous days, numerous trips where, we were just smoking puros and just trying stuff. And let's try this one out. What do you think about this? Smoke that, sit down, we'll discuss it. And he has sort of helped me elevate, my palate as well, because there was times where I could say, you know what, I'm getting something, but not really identifying what it was. And to really be able to sit down and sort of almost take me to class on, what this is, and this is, and then, okay, what's the characteristics of this type of tobacco, and to really understand that, so no, it's not just that, but that's actually like the licorice taste, or it's not just, citrus, but what kind of citrus? So it's not just a woody type of, but what kind of wood? And really watching him and Wasker, who's another guy who's in the factory, who's elevated himself in the company, do just when they're sitting there and they're going through a blend and really breaking it down, just watching them blew my mind on how they were. It wasn't just pepper, but what kind of pepper? It was this, black pepper. It was red pepper. It was this, and I'm like, wow, okay. So now I got a chance to really learn at the same time while I'm creating, and it just made the experience even bigger. Because I mean, Manny, he's been in the game 30 plus years. He's been doing this for so long. I mean, that I had to get to slow him down sometimes on, listen, I understand that you're saying it at a faster pace than I'm at right now. So let's slow it down and he was right there along the ride. And that's one thing I respect about him and Guillermo is that, I mean, once I told them, what I wanted to do, they were like, we can do that. And we actually love the fact that you want to be a part of this whole process. So it was almost like a little bit more respect because I definitely wanted to take it from step one all the way through.
Yeah, we'll get a little bit more into this in just a minute, but just to kind of, I did want to take a step back in your life and your journey because I wanted to talk a little bit about your origin story too. Born in Germany, everything, moved around, but then you settled as later on in your childhood in Memphis, Tennessee. Now I can hear the Southern in your voice. Are your folks from the South too? Or
no, actually, my mom and dad are from Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I believe it's because of all the bouncing around that I got to adapt in so many different areas. But spending so much time in Tennessee, sort of, and Arkansas, sort of probably helped that out. But yeah, my folks are from Tennessee. And then from there sort of moved around, but yeah.
So settled in Memphis, grew up in there. Now Memphis has this complicated existence. I say, I love the city of Memphis. I think it's one of my really good friends from college has lived there for the last 20 years as well. And he was a teacher, and then he's now a pharmacist. He taught while he put himself through pharmacy school. Now he's a pharmacist and everything. Wow. And it's this beautiful city with a lot of rich history and everything. And of course, it also has, its complications and everything. Now you grew up in I believe is the now I'm going to missay it. It's the Forsyth or the fire. What there's a neighborhood that you grew up in.
Fraser.
Okay.
Yes.
Forsyth. I don't know where I got that.
So it's that's the north side of Memphis. And Memphis isn't like crazy big, but it still has its sort of sectors or areas. But yeah, so on the north side of Memphis, I was in Fraser.
And you went to high school there as well.
Yeah.
Played sports. Now, I found this really interesting. You talked about this in an interview where you compared the high school you went to the high school from Paterson, New Jersey in Lean on Me, the movie, where Morgan Freeman is the star of the film, plays Joe Clark, the principal. And yeah, I love that film, by the way. So that when you compared it to that, I was like, wow, that must have been an experience for one. And two, I was like, I love that you compared it to Lean on Me because I love that film. But like you said, that had to have been a challenging time in your life as you were growing up. You had to grow up pretty fast, it sounds like.
And for those who know the movie, this was Lean on Me before Joe Clark. This was before the reform. Before the reform happened. Yeah. So it was it was a challenge to really, and it also opened my eyes on what do you want, and really understanding that there was a time where I'm like, I want more than this. I want to be here and not here, and what it's going to take to do that, and sort of, like you said, grow up a little bit quicker to where now you got to put things into play and put things in order on, what you had to do. I mean, you walking home from school and you see, a lot of, drug dealers and drug addicts. You're walking through that. You're coming to school and it's it's not organized. I always tell people this comparison because I mean, like, you know, when you go to lunch, you go to lunch in school, and you know, you have your teachers in there that's sort of making sure everything runs accordingly in lunch to make sure, you know, nothing's going on. We didn't have that. You know, teachers didn't come to the lunchroom. It was it was, you know, some days it was mayhem, you know, because there was no adult supervision
Oh,
that was
wow.
going on. So you just didn't know what could have possibly happened. This is the reason why early on, I learned how to play chess because of this
I was
reason
hoping
right
you'd
here.
bring this up. Yeah. I
Yeah.
found out you were a chess
So
player.
yeah. So because of that and going into the lunchroom and seeing the chaos, I started just taking my lunch and just going to my English teacher's class, who he taught chess during lunch. So I got to learn chess and really just start, you know, I mean, I think chess is an awesome game and an awesome like a mind worker because it makes you make some certain decisions depending upon, you know, what your opponent's doing. And so I ended up getting a chessboard early on, about 8th or 9th grade, but nobody in my house played chess. So I had the challenge of playing against myself a lot of times and trying
Oh,
to
wow.
spin the board, play, spin the board, play, and that's how I sort of, you know, other than going to the lunch, I mean, to my English teacher's class at home, I would just play on the board, you know, against myself. And
Hmm.
so that was, I mean, it was definitely a challenge, I think, because it's just so much with all the history and everything that Memphis has. It's just, you know, I feel like we get to a point where sometimes we're comfortable with our surroundings, and and there is some people don't feel like there's a chance for a change, so they just go with it. And I feel like at a time, that's what it was, especially in that school. That's what it was. It was just like this is what it is, and I just, you know, I made sure to, and this is another reason why I played 4 sports in high school. Played Started out, you know, you got football, then basketball, and I actually ran track and played baseball at the same time. And that was for 4 years, and that kept me busy.
Mhm.
So there wasn't a chance for me to really dive into a lot of the other stuff that a lot of my other friends had the opportunity to get into.
Sure.
And it kept me on a straight and narrow, also because of my focus on what I wanted. I didn't give my chance. I didn't give myself an opportunity. And then my dad he was beyond strict. So while my friends were 16, 15, 16, 17, out, you know, going out to the clubs and doing all this stuff, yeah, I was either I was in the house if I wasn't playing sports. So, you know, my outings were going to a basketball game, going to a football game, track meets, you know, and playing baseball.
So now here's my question: because of chess and everything, you played the way that I'm by no means a professional football analyst or anything, but by the way I observed you playing football, you were a very calculating player, which obviously has its roots in your affinity for chess. Were you always calculating, and that's why chess kind of you you and chess got together, or did chess turn you into this calculating person?
I think that so even before high school, I always tell people like I wasn't a kid that was just, you know, naturally, I'm just that guy. That wasn't it. I wasn't the star in Pee Wee and then became the star in middle school and then was the star when I got to high school. I sat on the bench, and that grew something in me to where, um, you know, I felt like once I cracked this lineup, nobody's taking it. And it was more here than it was that, oh, I was the fastest or I was the strongest. Or, no, I didn't mind whatever somebody being, even going further into the league, I didn't mind somebody being faster. They can't pick up on it here to where they can translate it. Me running a 4.4 or 4.5, them running a 4.2. But when I play, I still run that 4-4-4-5. And when they play, they're running a 4-6-4-7 because they got to think and process and this, that, and the other, and it slows them down. I'm still playing the same speed that I play regardless, and they have to think about things, and that's where I beat a lot of people, and that's where I really made I made my way is first off being on the bench and just having that chip on my shoulder. And that's what made it to where now this is a thinking man's game. Playing the position that I play, especially on defense, I mean, you had to sort of know where everybody is, at times get people lined up. So in order to do that, you got to know your job and more. You have to understand what's going on outside of, I mean, you have to almost be that defensive coordinator, on the field. And I took pride in actually not just learning my job, but learning what the linebackers had going on. Okay, what gaps are the defensive linemen? Where are they going? Because where is my fit? And not knowing, okay, now when this guy moves though, now where's my fit in that? So it made it a little bit easier for me, depending on whether we were 4-3 in this one or we played 3-4 over here. I could adapt and adapt a lot quicker than a lot of other people could. And that played a part in what you talk about with chess, and because a lot of times you have to adapt different moves. It makes you adapt because a guy could sit there and go to the attack on chess, and it puts you in that defense mechanism to where now, how do I retreat and still be able to attack him on his next play? How do I make this move and maybe give up somebody, but now he's putting himself in a vulnerable situation? It plays a big part in it. I try to, I'm in the process of trying to, eventually teach my son chess, whatever. But like, it's going to be it's going to be like now teaching someone else, whatever. It's a lot different because I just learned. I learned it just basically first off sitting back and watching. Secondly, now, okay, I'm going to take my bruises while I learn. I'm going to jump in and I'm going to take all the bruises. You can beat me a couple of times, but I'm going to take these bruises and I'm going to learn from them. And I think that's what sort of that whole sitting on the bench first off, and then just understanding how can I outthink this guy? How can I do something that, okay, he's fast, but I can do these other things better and make that more of a focal point than just speed or strength.
You're teaching your son chess. My mother-in-law actually, over Christmas, she took him for about a week and everything. She taught him chess, and so he wanted to play. Just this happened just last weekend, and he probably hadn't played in a month. And I was like, "You play? Like, when did this happen?" He's like, "Oh yeah, Grandma taught me." I'm like, "Okay." So he set up the board. He set up the pieces. He knew where everything went, and he knew how all the pieces moved. And we played, and it was first of all so much fun, and he had so much fun, even though I beat him. I didn't let him win. Because I wanted him to think about it. I'm like, okay, well, what did I do here that how did you lose? And so we started talking about that, and as best of a conversation between an adult and a 7-year-old can be. And like I can tell he's gonna beat me very soon. Like, because he has a mind for it, and it was really,
and that will for it too. Like and that's the one thing. I mean, I don't give my son a break on anything. It doesn't matter what we're playing. Listen, until you can beat me, I'm not gonna be that guy that, oh, you got it. No, you're gonna have to learn. You're gonna have to learn the hard.
My dad was the same way. My dad didn't never let me win. Never.
It gives you that grit. I mean, it's almost like a callus. It builds up to where you're like, okay, I don't want that no more. Like you gotta sort of. I mean, you can learn a lot from losing. You can learn a lot from failing. You can learn a lot from it, and it's not. You can actually learn more from failure than you can from success. And I think that's what. It's hard to say sometimes, whatever. But now, kids, this generation and younger kids, I mean, it's we've done so much because every generation wants to do better for their kid, and of course, we make them a little bit greener and we make them a little bit less, less tough and have to deal with certain situations because, of course, we want better for our kids. But I think that's what gave me that sort of grit and that grind, even with Pee Wee ball. My dad never paid for me to play. If I wanted to play, I had to go out and cut yards, rake grass. I had to pay myself to play Pee Wee ball.
Oh, wow.
So that $30 or $40 was coming from my pocket. If you want to play, and this is one reason why quitting was never an option. I had to grind to even get out here. I'm not giving up, even though I was on the bench. No,
Wow.
and I think people saw this is when I was in middle school. Again, on the bench, football. So track season comes around. Now our track coach, he's an assistant coach on the football team. And while I'm running, and I was pretty good at track too. And while I would be running in practice, he would always come into the middle of the track to the field, and he would yell at me while I'm running around. He would always say, "You don't have to beg to play out here. Oh, you're going to run. You don't have to beg," because he knew I was on the bench in football, and so he was like, "No, this is your time." It's sort of like you. These are the moments where you got to grind it out in order to, when you get to that opportunity and that point, you don't relinquish that opportunity. And those are things that, later on you sort of see it, but in the time you feel some type of way sometimes. But that's what molded me. That's what molded me to have the sort of that sort of, not just a chip on your shoulder, but to understand, first off, anything given to you, whatever, can easily be taken. I had to grind and work for a little bit of everything that I got, and it made me appreciate it even more. But it also made me value it way more, to where I can't let nobody take it from me.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about that, and I know that your favorites, not your favorite, but your best sport was actually baseball.
Yeah, it's crazy how, you think, especially you look at some of these contracts now, you be like, good Lord, why didn't I go that route? But baseball, and because, again, I mean, I love Memphis. Memphis has always been good to me, and they will continue to be good. I mean, it taught me a lot. But our school, there wasn't that much organization. So the baseball coach at times, he just passed away, rest in peace. But there were times where the coach would ask me, like, who should pitch or who should play this position. I'm in the 10th grade.
Oh, wow.
I just about every year I led the league in batting. If I got on base, I was getting around the bases. Period. I was never a guy that was always hitting for home runs, because I knew when I got on base, I'm gonna make my way around. But I had great seasons in baseball.
Billy Bean would have loved you.
Oh, boy, listen, the analytics were off the chain. I mean, I had the analytics rolling. But yeah, baseball, and I could have took an opportunity and possibly, but the thing is that I didn't have, and this is in football too, there was nobody before me that I could look at and say, oh, this is an example of what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Even in football, there was nobody at my school or anything where I could say, oh, this is the example of, a successful football player here, that I could sort of see, okay, this is the route he took. Or use, like now we have so many camps with guys coming back and giving those sort of nuggets of knowledge and information. We didn't have that. No, I didn't have anybody, whatever, that with baseball, that even my coach wasn't experienced in it, to be able to give me some information on, okay, minor leagues, AAA, if you get drafted and going here, and what that's going to look like. So I got a scholarship in football, and it seemed like the sensible thing to do. This is a guarantee, and that's why I roll with that.
That's awesome. What a awesome story of growing up, and I mean, challenging and everything. It gave me a lot to think about, not only in the way that I grew up, but also in the way that my kids are growing up now, kind of just learning about your story in particular. And we have some commonalities. We're like I said, we're about the same age. I don't know how old your kids are, but
9 and 7.
9 and 7. Yeah, mine's 7. Mine are 7 and 3, and so
Yeah.
it's it gives you a lot to think about the way that how I was raised, and how you were raised. My father wasn't as strict, but he probably could give your dad a little bit of run for his money in some areas, but but it's it's truly a success story, Ken. I mean, thank you so much for sharing that part. We're gonna go back into your story a little bit more as we kind of talk about your college and playing days here in a little bit, but want to take a break here, and we're gonna break for our United Cigar presidential trivia segment. As I told you, don't worry, we're not gonna take you back to class too much, but this is a fun little segment that we do that's sponsored by United Cigars. It's United Cigars featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey, Byron, and Alfonso lines from Selected Tobacco. So smoke one today and start living united. Now, we've talked about your time in Memphis, Tennessee. There have been 3 presidents, 3 of them, that have hailed from Tennessee. That was their quote unquote home state. And those presidents were Andrew Jackson, James Polk, and Andrew Johnson.
Okay.
How many of these 3 presidents were actually born in the state of Texas, or Texas? Excuse me, born in the state of Tennessee? Is it A, all 3 of them, B, 1 of them, or C, 0 of them?
I want to say 1.
I'm glad you didn't say 3, because it's the answer is not 1, but it's 0. None of them were actually born in Tennessee. Yeah, it's so we've actually had no presidents actually born in the state of Tennessee. But
I should have had my daughter. Right here to answer that question.
Andrew Jackson notoriously is the president that actually has no home state, because the area he was born in the wilderness, and the land that he was born in is actually still to this day in 2023 is debated whether it's North Carolina or South Carolina. So we have no idea. Yeah, we have no idea where he was born. He was born in either North Carolina or South Carolina, but it was in the wilderness, specific wilderness, and but he lived in Tennessee for most of his adult life and everything. And that's where he started his military career. That's where he ran his presidential campaign out of. Andrew Johnson, very famously too, became vice president at the end of the Civil War from Tennessee, which, I mean, God, what a controversial move that was for Lincoln, and for him to actually break away from his home state, who was part of the Confederacy, because he was a Unionist. But here's the small world that we live in. James K. Polk. He's one of my favorite presidents. But it's for a lot of reasons. He was notoriously boring. That was, people thought he was a bore, like he was not interesting to talk to. But I found a lot of things that he did in his presidency were very interesting. One of them is this is the small world to tie into you. So you were drafted by the Seattle Seahawks, which of course is in Washington State.
Yeah.
Which is part of the United States' first purchase of Pacific Coast property. So James K. Polk purchased the land that is known. He purchased the Oregon Territory, which is now Oregon and Washington, from the British Empire. So, so where you started your NFL career, it was made possible by President Polk.
By President Polk.
Small world. So, I like these little tie-ins.
When I found it out. I like that.
I like these little tie-ins, because they're. I love presidential history. That's why we do this segment. I find the presidents to be incredibly unique individuals, and they all have, we've had good ones, we've had bad ones, some, and most of them in between, but they are all crazy. That's always my favorite thing to say. Every single president has been absolutely nuts and out of their mind, because you have to be.
They have something a little wrong with them. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you have to be nuts. Think about this, Ken. You have to be crazy. I know you were the vice president of your senior class, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, little foray into politics yourself, but I mean, you have to be nuts to be run for president, because at any given point, half the country loves you and half the country hates you. So that's pretty
You are
much every
correct.
president, like you going into
I'm talking about
office.
like for real.
Yeah.
Like you know that well half of the people are going to despise you, and
Yeah.
then you have to try to change that narrative
Yeah.
some way.
A slight majority, one way or another, is either going to love you or hate you. But that's the life that you leave that you lead as president, which is just nuts. So, well, that was our presidential trivia segment, sponsored by United Cigars, just featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey, Byron, and Alfonso lines from Selected Tobacco. Smoke one today and start living united. This next segment was something, again, speaking of, you mentioned this about learning something new every day, Ken. I had heard of this organization, and this is our charity segment that we do every week with our guests. And I always ask my guests to bring a charity or nonprofit of their choosing that they want to talk about. And I had heard about this organization. This is the Jack and Jill Foundation, specifically the chapter of Sugarland, Missouri City, basically the Greater Hounston area, which is where you've resided for the last 20 years. But learned a lot about this great foundation. What a great organization it is, and the outreach that it has and everything. So I decided to give you the stage a little bit here, and you can talk a little bit about this foundation and the Botillion, which is the grand event that they've hosted. This is now their, I believe, 2022 was their 21st year.
Yes.
Of doing the Botillion, which is a great event that they do for gentlemen. So people are probably familiar with cotillions. I certainly am. I didn't know anything about a Botillion until today. So that was cool to learn a little bit about that. So talk a little bit about this foundation and this event and why it's so near and dear to your heart.
Well, I think the foundation does a great job of really trying to focus on giving the attention to children and sort of giving them something that they probably have never experienced, never thought to experience, and really put them on a pedestal of being, and when you talk about the young men, of going from a boy to a man, and showing and sort of giving them that example, especially with a lot of kids in Houston as well as just throughout the country that are without a father in the household. It gives them something to sort of look up to as well. I talked about, not having those examples in certain aspects, whatever, of me growing up when it comes to different sports and that type of thing. But a lot of these kids don't have the example of just what it looks like to be a man in their own household. And I think that's the one thing that they do a great job of bringing in. We have a program they're talking about doing right now of inserting like golf into these kids' life and sort of showing them, having athletes come back and sort of showing them the game of golf. And then from there, filtering off to different conversations just about, just about life. It's about things, just about different steps, how golf plays a major part in business, which they do a great job of inserting into their lives as well. Their programs are not limited to just one or the other. Like you said, they do the cotillion, which is for the young ladies, and it's a big program. And a lot of the dads, doing like sort of like date night with your daughters and going out and sort of still instilling that family aspect, into the household and into their daughters. It's the same thing with these young men, of showing them that they can. It's cool to be on the good side of things. You get so many times, whatever, where the music videos and everything else shows you that something else is cool, that the streets are cool, and that all this other stuff is cool. But it's cool to be able to not have to look over your shoulder. It's cool to be able to sit there and actually have friends who are going to hold you accountable. It's cool for these types. This is what they're teaching these kids, and I love being a part of stuff like that, to where it's not just you're adding value to a young man's life. You're adding value to him to where he can understand that, the conversations can be more, centered around what college am I going to, what am I going to major in, like you said earlier, I was valedictorian. I mean, salutatorian of our school. Like, so that type of stuff is cool to be like. A lot of people don't look at that and and they want to rag on people, whatever, for being smart. But that's cool to be, in that type of light. And I think they really do a great job of shining light on those type of things and really pushing for these kids to understand what's really cool. It's really cool to sit there and say that you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer. You can work in law enforcement. Like these type of things, whatever you can do and be on the good side of things and not have to worry about some of the things they have to deal with in their neighborhoods. That's not the only thing that's out there. That's the one thing that I talked earlier about with Memphis and some of my friends, that they see what they see every day, and they sort of think that that's just the natural way of things. But early on, sometimes if you can connect with some of these kids and sort of show them that there's more to life, more to just even their city than just what they see in their neighborhood,
right?
It gives them other options. And I think that's what Jack and Jill definitely does a great job of really showing them the options that they have outside of what they might see every day.
What I thought was really cool, like I said, I did a deep dive in learning about the organization, because I'd heard of this, but I didn't know anything about what it was really about when you told me about it earlier today. And I found that the national foundation, because these are the one that we've been talking about specifically is the chapter there in your local area, the Sugar Land, Missouri City, Greater Hounston area. But the national chapter is very, very diverse. There's men, women, mostly Black, but there are a couple of white folks on the executive board on the national level. But the local one, the local chapter that you've been talking about, that we've been talking about tonight, is all woman run. It's 100% women on the executive board, and that's I think, and again, like you said, it's not just for young men. There's also they also do the cotillion. They also do young women as well. I think that's what's really beautiful about this organization, is that it's not focused on just one group of people, or even one sex or one race or anything like that. It's a collective focusing, and the work that they've done is incredible, and it's fantastic. I see why you've grown to fondness for it and wanted to talk about it tonight, because it's just it looks like a great organization, and I've learned a lot about them today, and what great work that they do. So it's a beautiful organization. So thank you.
No, thank you. Definitely.
So later tonight, we do this every week. We've done this for over 2 years now. We've featured I guess we're in the dozens now, dozens of different charities, some cigar related, some obviously like tonight, mostly are non-cigar related. And every week my wife and I will make a small donation in honor of our guests. So later tonight we'll be making a donation to the Sugar Land chapter of Jack and Jill in honor of my guest tonight, Ken Hamlin. So I placed it in the chat. I'll also be in the show notes. You guys can learn a little bit more about this foundation, this specific chapter that Ken supports, and I encourage you guys to donate to it as well if you feel so called. It's a great organization for young men and young women, and giving them the direction in their lives that they need, and show them more of the world than just what's in their neighborhood, as Ken said just a few moments ago. So thank you, Ken, very much.
Definitely. Thank you.
So wanted to get back to we were going to cut back into the cigar industry and everything. We've kind of danced around it a little bit. So we're going to go back to your professional career in a second, but you retired from sports, and what's the this isn't your first foray. You've been retired for a couple of years now. This isn't your first professional foray. What did you do immediately after retiring? Did you go into any other ventures like real estate, finance, or anything else, or what did you do initially before cigars kind of came into the world of Ken Hamlin?
Well, one thing that I learned from a couple of what I would call OGs in football, older guys who they spit a little bit of knowledge, and some people they hold on to some they let it slip away. But one thing one of the guys told me was to get started with your second career before your first one ends. And So while I was playing, I invested in real estate, and sort of had that already going early in my career, so that when I did retire, I really didn't rush into anything. I had that going, sort of added to that, to the real estate a little bit, and sort of saw what I wanted to do. Also, I was already involved while I was playing. I did a lot of radio and TV, and really was into that quite a bit. With Seattle, me and Marcus Trufant would always do a weekly radio. When I got to Dallas, I was doing radio and then started doing TV. I was on First Take and doing that type of stuff. I was on ESPN quite a bit. So once I retired, I still got tied in with that. Eventually got on with Cox Sports and started doing the Arkansas Game Day, and had been doing that for the last 7 years. So I was doing stuff to sort of keep me, occupied and being involved, still in football and still a part of especially college football, but doing some NFL stuff as well. I actually did I did the pregame show for the Super Bowl, New England versus Seattle, for Sky Sports. So I went over to UK a couple of times, went over to London and worked with Sky Sports over in London.
Oh,
and
wow.
I did their pregame show for the Super Bowl, an hour show on the field, and got to watch that debacle happen firsthand. But yeah, so I mean, I've been involved.
Why didn't you run the ball? Sorry, go
Oh
ahead.
Jesus! Oh Jesus! Lord, that's still, that's a tough one. But yeah, so I've been involved with TV, radio, and doing stuff like that ever since I hung up the cleats, and then it got into I was smoking cigars while I played, and I got more involved into being in the lounges and going to the IPCPR, and that's really the first time that I saw the Pro Cigar booth, and when I saw that booth, I took the little pamphlet they had and I brought it back to Houston. I go back to the cigar lounge and I'm like, guys, like, we need to go check this out. And I remember the first year, I was still in that stage of waiting for everybody to sort of book their flight, waiting for everybody to get the registration pass. Missed out on it. And then the next year, I didn't wait on anybody. I didn't care who was coming. I didn't care what was going on. I booked my flight. I registered. I got involved, and I went down there for myself. But outside of just football, I've had other businesses already going on and sort of added to it just to keep me busy and really to sort of see. I mean, of course, it's not really a hands-on thing when you think about managing real estate and that type of stuff, but that's what gave me the opportunity to sort of see what else was out there as well.
This will be a conversation for another time, but I do want to dive into your foray into broadcasting, because I remember I digested so much sports radio in the early aughts and the 2010s and everything, and I remember you guesting a lot on ESPN radio, hearing you on Galloway's show, Galloway and Company, a few times. Yep. I remember, now it's obvious because you started working outside my region, and so but I always wondered why you never got into broadcasting, because I thought you had a knack for it.
I've been involved. It just especially with bigger networks. I mean, you have to, I think that sometimes, some of these gigs go to guys who are coming off of, Hall of Fame careers, and they automatically get put into.
Well, think about the Tom Brady contract that he has waiting for him. No joke.
Definitely.
Yeah, poor Greg Olson gets kicked to third string, and because Tom Brady's coming up. Yeah,
pay cut. Yeah, we're gonna wait. We're gonna bring him into here. So yeah, I mean, it's a natural thing, and so I mean, like I said, I mean, I've had times in my life where I had to wait my turn. So I don't mind that, even in this aspect. I mean, I understand that if and when it does happen, it'll be the right time, and just like I said with anything else, I'm gonna grab a hold of it, and
Well, once
It
you
will
do,
be
you're never
very,
letting go. You're never letting go.
it'd be
So,
very hard for them to take it away. So for sure.
so starting with the I guess so the beginning of the arrival was fostered in your beginning of Pro Cigar. So I'm guessing that's how you stumbled into La Aurora. I've heard so many great things about that tour, about how the La Aurora tour is like one of the things I mean, they're all great, but there's something
Yeah.
specific, something very, very unique about the La Aurora tour that just kind of captivates you. And it sounds like it certainly did with you. Is that when you first met Guillermo and Manuel Noah and everything? Was at Pro Cigar?
Pro Cigar was the first time so it was actually a great thing that that all of that happened the year prior, waiting with all my friends and us not going, and then it leading into me going by myself the following year, because I got to really focus in. I was there by myself. I got to really focus in on being in the factories, learning and not really worried about just having fun and with my friends, but actually seeing the entire process. And probably right before that, I dove into the growing part of tobacco, and I actually ordered tobacco seeds
You don't
online.
say.
I did. I started growing tobacco in my backyard, and
Okay.
right, yeah, I grew it. The first time I grew it, I just wanted to see if it's going to grow, and I mean, I had tobacco leaves that were taller than me, in my backyard. And my wife at one point, especially when I had the petri dish in the garage with the lights on it, she was wondering what I was growing. she, she let me know right there, like, I'm not
Ken,
going to
honey, what
jail.
what 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 are you
Yeah.
doing?
What is this? And so after I grew it, I was like, okay, I did that. Cool. I pulled the plants out, and then few months later, I start seeing, something what I think is probably weeds growing in the garden again. But the seeds had fell into the garden and it started growing again.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take it to the next step. And so I remember coming back. Before I went to Pro Cigar, I was at IPCPR again. And one of the growers for Reyes I was walking around and met Nurka, and I met a whole bunch of people, whatever. And I remember going to their booth, and I asked him if he had a few minutes just to sit down. And I was like, told him what I was doing, and we sat down and we talked for about 30 minutes on just the steps and the process of moving throughout growing tobacco. And I came back, grew the tobacco, cut it. I actually hung them right here under my palapa, hung them out to sit there and dry. And I can remember the next stage is the fermentation process. And I go on Google and I'm like, got to figure out what I'm going to build to do the fermentation process. And I build this huge contraption. I mean, I went on Google and found this guy that was doing one. He had this styrofoam build out. And I went to Home Depot, got this about 3 or 4 inch thick walls of styrofoam. Had my electrician friend come over and makeshift my heater to be able to go up to like 130. All this stuff. I had all this stuff built out in the garage. Again, my wife's in the garage, like, what in the hell are you doing?
Oh my gosh.
And
That's awesome.
I had it all. I had the rods going in. I literally cut a door in the styrofoam where I can step into this thing and actually like be inside of it. And then I started seeing, I'm like, something really ain't working right, this, that, and the other. So when I went to Pro Cigar that year, I was at Reyes again, and I talked to one of the master growers, and I was telling him, I was like, I'm at this process, and I built this thing, and he was like, well, how many leaves do you have? And I told him, I said, I got about 60 leaves. He said, no, you're doing too much. He simplified it so much to where he was like, you could take a rock, put the leaves in a bag, put a rock down, put the bag on top of that rock and put another rock on top of that and let them sit out there and you'll get the process done. I built this entire contraption that basically I had to trash because what I did was what I did was for production of like 10 to 20,000 leaves.
Oh my gosh.
I had
Oh,
60. So yeah, so it was gonna take a while for me to get everything. So yeah, but it actually it gave me that sort of like, okay, what's next? It gave me that sort of drive to sort of see what. So when I went to Pro Cigar, I mean, I was very inquisitive about different things, asking questions, and so
was
when
this
I went
Leo? Was
to
this Leo Reyes that you were talking to from Reyes, De Los Reyes, or
no, yes, the older yes, it
yes?
was. That's who I
Yeah,
talked to when I
that
was
guy's a
talking about the permit.
genius.
Oh, he listened and he looked at me like I was crazy once I told him what I actually did. He
He's
was like,
crazy.
"Yeah, yeah, yes." He was like, "Yeah, no, that's too much." But when I went to La Aurora, I went to La Aurora. I went to a few companies, and because I went early and went to a couple of smaller companies, went to some bigger ones like Casada, La Aurora, Reyes, and I remember that the first time I was there, we were at the gala, and uh, one of the other people from La Aurora introduced me to Guillermo, and he told me, he's like, I heard you were interested in possibly doing your cigar, and you know, we were talking briefly. He was like, and I told him, I was like, yeah, I'm interested in actually creating my own cigar, yes. And he was like, listen, I'm gonna give you my schedule. If you're really interested, let me know. You come back down, and we'll get going with it.
Oh wow.
And I told him, and I was like, listen, I'm not the one to play with. Like, now you give me a schedule, like I'm gonna be here. And he did. He followed through, and probably within the next 3 or 4 weeks, I was back in Santiago, and he linked me up, and he because I didn't meet Manuel at the time, so he connected me with Manny, and from that's why we're like brothers now. I mean, me, Guillermo, and Manny, we every time I went down, we were in the factory from like 9 to 5. We were eating dinner together. The relationship just grew organically to where, you know, they would drop me off from the factory at the apartment I had up there, and they would ask me all the time, like, "What do you have plans for the evening?" My statement to them always was, "My plans does not have plans." So they would like, "All right, pick you up for dinner at 7:30," and we were at dinner and we were discussing stuff. Then we were just, you know, just having great conversations, and that's what it made it. It made it organically easy to roll with La Aurora because first off, I saw what they did, their history and their reputation, and it made it a natural fit to be able to say, you know what, this is the factory that I'm gonna go with to create my cigar.
He must have really seen something in you, Ken, because like I remember when Carl Malone came out with his cigar, and Carl talked about this. They're a they're Guillermo's always kind of held everything very close to the vest, and they
Yes.
don't work with a lot of people. So Carl had to kind of break down a few barriers.
Mhm.
The way that he talked about it, I remember in a couple of interviews. So he must have really seen something in you and your dedication. Obviously, building this contraption and other stuff. I'm
Yeah.
sure that story got around.
I
But
told them that story too. Yeah.
um, but that I mean that's awesome. So you start working with Manuel
Yeah.
on the arrival, as we kind of talked about earlier in the show. Um, you talked a little bit about your vision early on and everything too. So and a little bit about the blending process and everything. Walk us a little bit through more, like, you know, you said you would smoke like puritos and things like that, like building your cigar from the very beginning with Manuel, like was it anything like you expected? Was it harder? Was it, you know, easier? Was it pretty much what you anticipated? Like what did that look like for you as you were?
I didn't I really didn't know how much time would be invested in just saying, hey, let's you know, let's try this, let's try this. Because you know what, you could easily, you know, put together a few blends and roll with the first thing you put together. Um,
Mhm.
because it could be great premium tobacco. It could actually be pretty good together. Um, but once you start playing with different tobacco and really seeing how they play off of each other, and how it's sort of, I mean, just the different like ways that they could give you certain notes placed in different places. Um, I could see then that, you know what, this is not an overnight just, hey, let's throw something together and let's just make it work. And the one thing that I appreciate Manny for doing too is like taking me to class, where it was, like I said earlier, it was, I'm learning at the same time that I'm blending and putting things together. So it wasn't a just, and because I sort of had this conversation with them, whether we were in the factory at dinner or whatever, they sort of understood after a while. Now this is, I mean, before I actually launched my cigar, this is 2 years in the making of before I even launched my cigar. So this is something that
Yeah, I was on the
it
docket for a
wasn't that,
while. Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't something that I just sit there and went down there 1 or 2 trips and then it was like, all right, we got it, let's go. This was some time that was placed. So this was time that we actually spent together too. So this was a relationship that was being built, and it was almost like them filling me out to sort of see just how serious I was too. And by me coming down there and actually, I wasn't sending representation. I wasn't doing, I mean, I was direct with Guillermo, I was direct with Manny. And once we got into what I quote unquote lab, it was really like I'm sitting back with open ears and just like, my eyes are wide open and I'm just ready to learn. I feel like I can't speak for anybody else, but I had no cockiness on thinking that I knew more than anybody else. I came in to learn. I came in to really just, take in everything that they could give me and sort of see, all right, I know what I like here. And I let him know certain things that I did like. Of course, the Ecuadorian wrapper was one thing that I, definitely wanted to play with. And then we just started working with different tobacco. And then we just started really seeing like, okay, what is this? What about this one? What about this one? And, you go from, so like I said, I had at first I had the Brazilian. When we thought we had something, I had the Brazilian as my binder,
Okay.
and we smoked it. I took some home, let it sit for a little while, smoked it again, and then when I went back, we changed up a couple of things. Ended up putting the Ecuadorian wrapper and binder, and I can remember we got the crew to roll a bundle of 25. And I brought it into Manny's office, and we had already smoked it like individually and all that type of stuff, but all together that first time, I handed him one out of the pack. I took one and we lit it right there at his desk, and he got on the phone, so he's smoking it, and he's on the phone. Now I'm smoking it, and I'm like, in my head, I didn't want to say anything, but in my head, I'm like, damn, I like this. And I'm over here like, yeah, but I didn't want to I have my poker face on and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to give him any leads on, I like it or not or whatever. And I was just looking at him and I was waiting for him to say something. And I can remember he was smoking. He's still on the phone, he's smoking. And then he put the phone down and said, Ken, we got something. And then picked up the phone and kept smoking. I was like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, give me something. But when he said that, it sort of knew that we were on the same wavelength. That you know what? Okay, you got it. Like this is where we were talking. This is what we were talking about. And it probably was the slightest change. That one thing of putting the Brazilian whatever from the binder to the filler, and then putting that Ecuadorian wrapper on the binder as well, made a slight change. But it just sort of solidified. I think. The direction that we were talking about going in, I talk about that aroma and just like it gave it, I guess, that extra little oomph where I'm like, yeah, I can roll. We can go with that. And that's when he gave me that sort of nod, that gave me that little like almost pat on the back, like, okay, like we're here. And I started like in
We've
that moment
arrived.
started. No, we have arrived. Yeah, because I started looking back. I started thinking like, damn, we've been a long way. Like from this moment, like we've done quite a bit, and it still isn't even launched yet. Like I mean, but even just in that time, I just thought about like all the enjoyment that I had leading up to that moment, and it was almost like, well, damn, this is actually, it's actually about to like actually happen. Like we actually have something here. Like so, it made that moment right there sort of stand out even more because I knew that was like the next stage and the next step to getting to that moment of, okay, now we can start, really putting it in other people's hands, possibly in the next few months.
I really want to applaud you in a lot of ways, Ken, because there's so many ways, celebrity, I'm using the quote fingers or not.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways that people come into this business and they kind of, I've seen it work in a lot of ways. I've seen it not work in a lot of ways, but I have to give you a lot of credit at the pace that you've worked at. In June of this year, it'll be 3 years from when the cigar was announced. You announced in June of 2020 that
Yep.
the arrival was coming, and it's still you. Of course, that was the middle of the pandemic, obviously, but
yeah,
you've built it slowly around this one cigar, this one blend, and you've really let it gain traction. You've get it in people's hands. You've let people experience it, like myself. And it wasn't until early last year, early 22 was when I first smoked it, and I just couldn't stop all year long. But it was I really just want to applaud the patience that you exhibited on it. And then now it sounds like I've heard that you're working on a second cigar that is that, and that's what you're smoking right now, or are
yes,
you?
Indeed.
Okay.
This is it.
And so is that going to be released later this year, or is that still to be determined?
That will be this year. Actually, the cigar is done. Actually, I am reformatting. It will be a new box as well that will be unveiled, and that's the one thing that's sort of right now waiting on that production.
It's always the box.
So that's been. Oh yeah. Trust me. And this is another. So like working with Johnny. And once I let him know that what I wanted to do and how we were talking about doing it, that's always a fun process. I mean, that whole creation of, because like, and I've said it before, it's like that presentation. I look at the entire process, the cigar, the bands, and the boxes. I take that whole thing and I say it's like a woman. The box is like the car that she's in. I mean, and a woman in a nice car, that gives you like that whole, like that double look. The band is like the dress she has on. You want that to have that certain type of presence as well. And then of course the cigar is that woman's body. That's sort of the added piece to it. So I looked at each piece or whatever that it was important for each piece to sort of stand on its own and have a certain type of high quality presence. So this new box, same way. It's been a process of like sort of making sure that it comes out the way that I envisioned, the way that Johnny envisioned, and sort of make sure that that's right. But once that's done, that will be this next cigar will be jumping out hopefully within the next probably 2 months.
Oh, terrific. Now, is it under the Arrival brand, or is it going to have like a whole other branding to it?
So this one will not be. So this one, I can say this one is actually developed and produced from Eladio Diaz.
Oh, wow.
So yeah,
okay.
So that's a whole nother. This one made it.
Throwing some names around, Ken. Okay, all right. Got me sitting up in my chair. Okay.
This one was special a different way, because sitting there and talking to Eladio, like this cat is 60 plus years in the cigar game, has been respected throughout. A guy that has created some monsters, and he has that same. One thing that he asked me initially was, what are you trying to create? And he was talking about like strength palette, basically like, were you trying to do medium, light, medium, full body cigars? What? And I told him, I was like, if I can be in that medium to full with just a whole bunch of like flavors just hitting you. And he was like, that's where we're at. That's what I like doing. And so sitting with him and oh my goodness, it's a gem coming out every time. Like, all right, let's try this one, let's do this one, let's do this one. So this one will come out of his new factory, and it's gonna be a special one. This one has 6 tobaccos in it.
Oh wow.
And went, instead of going with the Sumatra, went with the Ecuadorian Connecticut wrapper. And
Something he knows a
but
little about. Yeah. Okay.
exactly. So yeah, so I mean, keeping that same concept, but now this one will be this one still. I mean, I still a bunch of flavor, bunch of just notes, and it's gonna be a good one.
Does it have a name yet, or?
So what this is what we're doing. So the blue band that you see on the cigar right there, that's going to be one profile.
Mm-hmm.
The up and coming one will have a purple band, and
Okay.
that's going to be another profile, and it will be under that Connecticut type of profile.
Okay.
And there will soon to be a black band that will have a Maduro type of profile.
Okay.
That will be coming soon as well, and it's gonna be another special one to be able to work with the next guy that's gonna be putting that one together.
So will it be like the Arrival Connecticut or the Arrival Purple, or?
The Arrival Purple, right? And so what we're doing, so because even with the blue, me and Manny are working, and we got a couple of options right now that we've been working on. So there will be another blue coming out, and what we'll do is,
Oh,
so
wow.
since that one's, yeah, we're gonna make some things happen, especially this year. This year and next year will be some additions added. But the secondary under each color profile will have a secondary name.
Oh, terrific. Awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, that's exciting.
Oh yeah.
Very, very,
Oh, yeah.
very exciting. Got me sit up in my chair there, Ken.
Hey, that name there, it is, I mean, so I was able to sit with him, and he gave me the story on how he created the Oro Blanco.
Yeah.
And I had never smoked one at the moment when he told me the story.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, wow, like, and to smoke some of the things that he had already, and to really just sit down with him and sort of piece some things together. A few months later, I was gifted Oro Blanco, and sat and smoked it, and I could just sort of think back to that story, and just like it was a crazy experience. One of those moments where you sit back and, I mean, you really truly enjoy that interaction that you're having with that cigar in the moment.
Yeah. I've never smoked an Oro Blanco. I worked in retail for a bit. I sold a few of them, but I never never smoked one. Still going to happen at one point. I know I'll have the opportunity, but I did smoke a couple of his cigars. I smoked the Royale Robusto. And I love that cigar. I thought is one of the greatest cigar experiences I've ever had. But I was down in the Dominican and I was on the Davidoff tour when he was with Davidoff, and we were at his store. I guess he's got a store there in the DR. And we were there as part of the tour. We were there and we hung out for the afternoon. And he let us, me and the entire group that were on the tour, he let us smoke a cigar, the Master Blend series that he created under Davidoff. And it was one that I don't ever think it went to market, but it was basically for his 60th birthday. And he had used Cameroon wrapper on it. And there was Lakiro, which is definitely outside the Davidoff typical profile. And that cigar was incredible too. And that was unbelievable. He just gave me and I haven't smoked it yet. I brought it back with me, but he created a cigar to commemorate his 63 years in the cigar industry. Oh wow.
And I can't wait to to sit back and smoke this cigar. And I'm just trying to figure out when and when I'm gonna sit down, and actually if I'm gonna have it with like a coffee and just sit back and really enjoy it. So I'm waiting for that time to pull it out, but I can't wait.
I know you hung out with my partner Coop down at Pro Cigar this year. Him and I had the opportunity to interview Eladio and Henke Kellner, a couple of years ago on that tour.
Wow.
And it was through an interpreter. We through Klaus Kellner, Henke's son.
Yep.
Klaus was our interpreter. So we had a trifecta of greatness in that interview. And I haven't been. I was green enough to where I understood the moment, but it didn't intimidate me as much as it should have. But he was such a stoic figure and there's this warmness to him.
Yeah.
And he has stoicism mastered, but he's a very warm individual, and he wants to share his knowledge with everybody, and it very much came across in the interview, and I very much enjoyed that conversation with him. Although it wasn't.
I understand Spanish a little bit, but I'm still not. I'm not good by any means, whatever. But I find myself when he starts talking, and he's speaking in Spanish most of the time. He's talking. I find myself stopping and listening to him, like I really understand everything he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, he has this smoothness, whatever, with him. And it's just like, you understand, first off, how long he's been in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you want to take in as much as you can on what he's saying, what he's talking about, and just like soak it in. I gave him, when we sat down, first, I met him 5 or 6 years ago. And I met him at the all-white party at the Pro Cigar. And I was with a friend of mine, introduced me to him, and told me that he wanted to give me a cigar. And so anybody that doesn't know how me thinking I'm smoking a cigar already. So I'm like, oh, thank you. So I reach out my hand, and he's like, no. He has a presentation. Like, he wants you to put everything down, and he presents the cigar to you in like a humble way. And he wants you 2 hands to receive this cigar. So the first time I did that, he gave me the cigar and ended up giving my friend one of the cigars too. My friend's from Santiago. So then Eladio leaves. So I look at my friend, and I see that cigar they got tucked in their shirt. I got the one. I looked at my friend. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna need that other cigar he just gave you too. I'm like, I can't, you live here. I need to go back I need to have experience of both of them, whatever, just in case I smoke one, I need one other one. So they ended up giving me that cigar. So when I seen him again last year, I told him, I was like, those cigars that you gave me 4 or 5 years ago, I still haven't smoked. I said, but when I leave here and I go home, I'm sitting down and I am smoking that cigar. And when he gives you a cigar, it's from the vault. It has no band on it. It's from his stash. Like, I smoked this cigar and I was like, I hit his son up and was like, man, that thing is unbelievable. Like, it is crazy how he can just knock it out the park, like one after the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got back to DR, I was telling him about my cigar, about the arrival. And I said, I want you to smoke it. I'm gonna give you one to smoke. And I'm about to get up to go get a cigar. He said, hold on. And he told me, he said, I'm going to let you know what I think about your cigar. Like, and telling me not to be offended if he has some remarks about it. And with me, like I said earlier, I come into this, with not being cocky or feeling like I know my way or anything. So I told him, I was like, be blunt. Like, tell me exactly what you think. And I can remember me and my friend Travis were in the room, and he cut the cigar, he started smoking it. And he took a piece of the wrapper off of it and started chewing on it. And told me exactly what it was. He sit there and started breaking down some of the other cigar. Like, I was like, come on. It was one of those moments where I just gained even more respect for him. And it just became where, you know what, like, for this is a guy that I'd be honored to be able to put some stuff together with. It was, I mean, the relationship that I built out there and just in the cigar industry as well, all over. And I told this to Guillermo, I told this to Manny, and I was talking to a couple people when I was down there. It's like everybody's been so open. Everybody's been so like receiving and like, you know, just what do you want to know? What do you want to learn? I mean, from the growers to the blenders to the owners, I've gotten no like kickback of I don't want to help you or I don't want to see you succeed. I don't want. I mean, I got friends who own cigars that I've talked to just in the last couple of days, and they've given me information and nuggets and just on, you know, expanding and growing, and it's all been helpful, and I
That's
appreciate all
awesome.
of it.
That's awesome. Well, a lot of exciting things coming for the Arrival brand and beyond. Really excited for you, Ken. This is some awesome stuff to look forward to. Very excited for you. Congratulations on everything. I know you're not done yet. This is just the beginning, and I'm looking forward to it because your first foray has been awesome, and I really look forward to seeing you grow in this business. So thank you again.
I appreciate it.
Last few questions I wanted to go into is just going back to your life a little bit, just because I was interested in talking to you about it, and then we have a final few questions to conclude our tonight's conversation. But wanted to go back to your time. So we talked a little bit about growing up, and then you became a professional athlete. Obviously, you went to Arkansas, as you had mentioned before. Yeah. I know as a freshman you led the you led the team in tackles, first defensive back to ever do it at the University of Arkansas. Yeah. Where you were an All-American your freshman year.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen very often. No. This is a guy who, again, to your point earlier, in his secondary career, you know, in your career in early high school and everything, you rode the bench and you earned every step of the way and everything. So you leave college at the end of your junior year, correct? And correct. You go into the draft. You're drafted in the second round by the Seattle Seahawks, and you start right out the gate. And I told you the story before we got started. I said I remember this. I didn't know really who you were at the time, but you definitely made an impression. I remember I was in college and I was visiting a friend's family down in New Orleans, and the Seahawks were playing the Saints. And I was in a restaurant. I think it might have been a Chili's or something like that, but it was like a restaurant, but everyone was watching the game.
Yeah.
And you laid out Dante Stallworth, and it was this very, very awesome. It'd probably flagged today, but who cares?
Oh,
it was awesome.
Not a question. I might have got kicked out of the game if that happened right now.
The helmet went fly, and I remember the entire restaurant. Everyone was watching the game, including myself. When that hit happened, the entire restaurant jumped.
Yeah.
And it was like this, oh shit. And I was like, who the hell is that guy? And I remember seeing, and I didn't, years later, I realized it was your first start. You told me it was your first game too. And I didn't even put that together, but I remember it. I remember it happening, and I remember watching. I was like, oh my gosh. And then, so you had a really great career in Seattle. You played 16 games for the first couple of years. And that was the great thing about your career, Ken. You played every game, almost every single year. 2005 comes around. You get about 6 games into the season, and then you know what we're about to talk about. An unfortunate incident happens. I guess you're hanging out. So some family had flown up to Seattle. You took them out for a night on the town afterwards, and it was this incident at, I guess, outside of a club that you had been to, and one thing led to another, and a fight ensued, and I mean, it was horrific what happened to you. I mean, we were talking about the violence of your hit on Stallworth. I mean, unbelievable. You end up in the hospital.
Yeah.
Um, fractured skull, blood clots. I mean, unbelievable. I mean, when you woke up in the hospital, I'm presuming this was probably days after the incident or anything. I mean, what those early moments? I mean, what did that feel like? I mean, like, did you feel like your career was over? I mean,
So I actually, first off, I would say a fight didn't like occur. I remember, this is the part that I remember. Coming out of the place. Now I had my brother, a couple of my friends, and then the end of the season, I had of the previous season, I had a scope on my shoulder. I did my
mhm,
rehab in Houston. And my therapist, and actually the game that we were playing, it was Halloween weekend. The game that we were playing against the Houston Texans. So my therapist wanted to come to the game. So her and her husband, I got them tickets to the game in Seattle. So they were there as
okay,
well. So we went out. I had a Sunday spot that I would do after games. So we went to that spot. Wasn't really going on nothing, and a couple of my teammates and stuff, they wanted to go to another place. So we went to this other spot. I mean, had a good time. Nothing happened inside. It was all good. When we walked outside, it looked like it was a whole nother club outside. I
crazy.
mean, it was jam packed. I mean, it was literally, you couldn't walk through the crowd. So I had a female friend with me. I had my brother, my friends, and then my physical therapist and her husband all with me. So I'm walking through the crowd. I'm pulling on my friend's hand to come through the crowd, and I lost her hand. And when I reached back to grab her hand, I touched another guy's hand. He goes crazy, calls me all type of names, this, that, and the other. Um, we exchanged words, but then somebody sprayed pepper spray. So everybody
Oh
scattered.
gosh.
I remember coming up off the glass of the club, and when I backed up, I seen the guy that initially was talking crazy and like four other people surrounding me. And I could tell they didn't mean any goodwill towards me, whatever. So I'm backing up from them. I look across the street now, and my brother and my friend, one of my close friends, whatever, they're getting jumped by about 15 people.
Oh my gosh.
I'm still getting surrounded by more people. I got my physical therapist and her husband trying to get them. So my car, where I was backing up, my car was right around the corner. So I'm backing up, trying to just get to there. I'm trying to call my brother to come. I'm trying to make sure everybody else is still moving that way. More people are surrounding me. So when I back up and I get to where that corner is, there was a guy hiding behind the corner. He pistol whipped me. And that's when all the craziness happened, where all of those people jumped on me. And it wasn't a fight. It was just them taking their
Just,
turns, whatever, just hitting me.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So
The pistol whip to the head? Is that what fractured your
yeah,
skull?
they
Oh
pistol
my
whipped to the head, and
gosh.
probably a little bit of everything else too.
Well, I heard they
From
grabbed a
that,
sign too. You probably don't remember this
yeah,
now,
they
but
the stop sign,
yeah.
yeah, they was running around
Oh,
with the stop sign, yeah, definitely. Um, the guy that was hiding around the corner ended up pulling a gun on me and tried to shoot me, but it jammed. My
what?
brother ended up jumping on me. My brother and one of my friends ended up jumping on top of me and asking him, like, he's pleading with the guy, like, not to shoot me. Like, you've done enough. Don't kill him. Like, you've done enough. So that happened. And that's when the ambulance came, whatever, and I was taken to the hospital. Now I woke up, I don't know how many hours later, but it was still that early morning, basically.
Mhm.
Um, and I couldn't tell you after, from the hit to getting the hospital, I didn't have any recollection of any of that. Um, and so I remember waking up in the hospital, and I woke up, I had a headache. Um, come to find out, my
I'm
hand was
sorry. I didn't
broke.
mean to chuckle. I'm sorry.
No,
That's
yeah,
terrible.
um,
I can imagine this.
yeah, and it's like, so
Unbelievable.
I'm thinking that I just have a headache. Now I haven't gotten any doctor that told me exactly what's wrong, nothing yet. So I'm just thinking I got a headache, my hands hurt. I'm thinking, all right, I need to get out of here because I got practice tomorrow, basically, or I got practice this week. That's what I'm thinking until the doctor started, like, periodically they would wake me up and just tell me, hey, talk. And I'm wondering, like, what do you mean talk? Like, for what? Well, where my fracture was, it was where your speech pattern and everything is. So they were trying to make sure that I could still talk and speak, like regular.
Mm-hmm.
Then, of course, they let me know that, and then I'm talking to them, like, about, what's going on and moving around, this, that, and the other. And okay, I footballed, and the doctor's like, you might not play again. Like, this is serious. And he was letting me know the seriousness of the injury. And then you got to start, swallowing that pill a little bit. And I was in denial because I was like, oh, hell no, that's not happening. But then the scary part was, of course, they had to call my mom. My mom, it's 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning in Houston. And just thinking about her getting that phone call and having to catch a flight to immediately come to Seattle and all that stuff was going on. At the same time, that night, the guy that actually pistol with me was killed that night.
Oh
After
my
this incident
gosh.
happened, he was killed a couple of blocks, maybe a block or two down the road. So now the whole hospital is basically under alert because his family thinks that I have something to do with his murder. So now I'm under an alias. They're moving me around the hospital. Like, I was in the hospital for 7 days. So it was a whole experience. I had detectives coming, questioning me about all this stuff going on, showing me the footage from outside of the club, all this different stuff. So I ended up seeing the guy. He was basically, it was crazy how crowded it was outside, and the club was already still packed.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy was walking around outside with a jersey over his face, hiding his face. Come to find out, he had just got let out of jail. He was in a halfway house, and he was paying somebody in the halfway house to let him out at night. Just got out of jail off a manslaughter charge, and was in the wrong place. Me at the wrong place, him at the wrong place. It was a little bit of everything. So that's sort of how that all played out. Everybody had their own little injuries. My brother had a fractured jaw. My other friend got scuffed up. A little bit of everything. And it just, it was an unfortunate situation. And on top of that, it was unfortunate because I had teammates that were there. And my teammates that were there didn't do anything. Sat back and watched. So that made it even tougher because the guys that were there were guys that I felt like were friends, almost like family friends.
Well, yeah,
So
teammates are supposed to be family, right?
exactly. So it made that a little bit tougher, but I had a lot to deal with on my own, whatever. Just I had probably a full month of headaches, where I would get up and I would get dizzy. It was all type of stuff. Then I'm basically in the house, the entire time. And my mom is there just, making sure that I'm good. Knowing that the season was over with. Crazy part about that is that our team took that and they went on a run to make it to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't going to be a part of that. And having the Super Bowl play out the way it played out made it even tougher because I got injured that year. My backup got injured that year and didn't play in the Super Bowl. His backup got injured and didn't play in the Super Bowl. We ended up playing in the Super Bowl with the practice squad safety, and they took advantage of it. So that hurt even more because I knew I could have played a bigger role in that game, and to be on the sideline was it was tough. It was tough to sort of just live through.
Just compounding onto the trauma, just everything.
Yeah, definitely. And then still having to battle and go see all these specialists and doctors and try to get cleared to be able to even play football again. It just made it. I mean, it was an uphill battle. Another challenge, another roadblock. But luckily, I was able to be able to get clear of all the headaches and everything else, all the blood clots that I had. I mean, my head was basically covered in blood clots. For all of that to subside and go down. I mean, it was definitely the man upstairs watching over me and making sure that I came back from something that could have been a lot worse than what it was. It was already bad, but it could have been a lot worse.
Well, the remarkable thing is you do come back and you play 16 games the next season. You play a full season the next season.
Yeah. I was one of the guys that, I mean, I never came off the field. I played all 3 downs and punt was the only time that I came off the field. And that was in Seattle and in Dallas. So to miss that time was tough. It was real tough. But then I had to play the next year. And then to play the next year, it was strictly business. Not knowing, and this is the tough part about it, is that you could have been the guy that initiated and did all that stuff, whatever, to me, and I wouldn't know. I didn't know who was who. So to be in Seattle for a whole nother year, I mean, I went out one time, and I remember I had security with me and stuff, whatever, and I went out and I walked in this club, and you see people looking at you, and you don't know whether it's because they're looking at you because they just know who you are as a football player, or they know what happened to you, or they're the people that actually did it. You don't know. So it was uncomfortable about 30 minutes of me being in that place, whatever. And I was like, yeah, I can't do this. And I went back home. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do this. So that entire year was just strictly like, all right, I'm focused on one thing. And I told my agent, I was like, when my contract's up, I got to get back down south. Like, I got to get back something to a comfortable.
Yeah, the
space.
locker room must have been tough for you too then.
Oh, it was, because even the year that we made the Super Bowl run, after the incident happened to me, some of my teammates that I really like, that really vibed with me, they got into it with the guys that were there, because they questioned them on how could you allow this to happen, basically, like, and they heard the reports of what actually happened and what they actually didn't do, and it became an issue in the locker room, but they worked through it. And I think it made the team closer. To an extent, it definitely gave them something to sort of push them even further. But yeah, that next year was for me, it was strictly business. There was no, oh, it was basically, these are my colleagues, and I'm here to play for my next destination.
Wow. And that's just an unbelievable, I mean, to not just live through that, but to actually continue to have a unbelievable career afterwards. I mean, you had a Pro Bowl season after that.
Yeah.
When you were a Dallas Cowboy and everything. But
I'll tell you this real quick, whatever, because most people don't know this, whatever, because it wasn't put out in the news and everything. So that following year I played, and I made I got the Ed Block Courage Award that year. And so after the season, that's when free agency starts, whatever. My first visit was to New Orleans.
I've heard this. Yeah. So you were meeting with Mickey Loomis, right?
Yeah. So the day before that, I met with some of the other coaches. I was in town 2 or 3 days, and it seemed like I was going to be a saint. Like they were showing me areas where I could live, this, that, and the other. It didn't seem like I was going to leave there at least without an offer. And so the next day, I'm meeting with Mickey Loomis. We're in his office. We're talking. Next thing I know, I have a seizure on his floor. I wake up in the hospital.
I've heard this. Yeah.
Yeah, I wake up in the hospital, and at that moment, I felt like it's over. Like I already know what happened in Seattle, but now I'm having, I guess, side effects, whatever, from this, whatever. Like it's done. Like nobody's gonna mess with me. This is gonna be all over ESPN, da da da, whatever. And I remember talking to my mom on the phone when I finally came to in the hospital, and I was just like, yeah, it's done. Come to find out, I get on the phone with my agent. He had been talking to a few people, this, that, and the other. So from the New Orleans hospital, they fly me to Dallas. Cowboys pick me up from the airport, take me straight to the hospital. They running all these different tests. I was in Dallas for about 5 days, and every day, Jerry would call me and say, "Hey, we're working on some things, whatever, but just relax. We're working on something. We'll just relax. Just working on it. Hopefully everything's good for you in the hotel. Relax." And that's when I went from New Orleans having a seizure on the floor of the general manager's office. And then for it not to even, and this is this was still early on social media stuff and all that. So luckily we were in a time that it wasn't as big then as it is now, because of course it probably would have leaked some type of way or whatever the case may be. But I respect Mickey Loomis and that organization for not really putting it out there like that. But they allowed me to go and get to Dallas, and they ended up signing me to that 1-year deal to basically see was I functional or not. And that was the year that I had my Pro Bowl year.
Yeah, again, you play all 16 games for Dallas.
Yep.
And yeah, that was a unbelievable season. That was you had career highs in interceptions.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And yeah, what a year for that was. And so this is one little side trip, because you kind of set me up for this earlier in the interview. We were talking about your time playing baseball, and you look at contracts now with baseball players, but you're rewarded with after the season, you're rewarded with I think it was a 6-year deal, right? 6-year 5-year deal. 5 years, 30+ million. So at the time was a lot of money.
Yeah.
This is something I've always wanted to ask an NFL player, because I've never understood it. So baseball players, they sign these gargantuan deals, and basically the team's on the hook. Pujols signs that 10-year deal with the Angels. He plays almost the length of it, but they pay the entire amount. But for 10 years. So, but you signed a 5-year deal, but you were only in Dallas for 3 more seasons, three total, but 2 more seasons.
Yep.
So how does that work? If you have a 5-year deal, how did you only play 2 more seasons?
So with all these contracts, really only the first 3 years matter.
Okay.
So you get a guarantee, and that guarantee is basically for those 2 or 3 years. After that, they can cut you and not have to. So this is where that whole loyalty thing, whatever, sort of doesn't really fly in football, because they can sign you to that 5-year deal, but after a couple of years, they can sit there and make a decision and not be on the hook for any of the rest of it. They're only on the hook for that guaranteed amount. So that's where you see someone who, and now the numbers are a lot higher, whatever, but they'll say that he's guaranteed, Dak is guaranteed 100 and whatever million, even though his contract is for 200 and something. He's only guaranteed that amount, because after that, they could make a decision to go a different direction, and they wouldn't have to worry about paying any of the rest of it. So it's only really those first couple of years of the contract that they're really on the hook for.
Unless you're Kirk Cousins and you get the whole thing guaranteed, which was
Oh yeah,
crazy. Yeah, yeah,
now with the Deshaun Watson and Kirk Cousins, how he worked that deal. I mean, those, yeah, that's why these teams are all upset with the Cleveland Browns right now, because Deshaun got 230 guaranteed. Every quarterback that has their their resume says they have more things on it than Deshaun. They're asking for that.
yeah.
That's why the whole Lamar Jackson situation is going to be crazy, because
Hmm.
he wants that. He has an
Sure.
MVP. He has all these different things on his roster, on his resume. I gotta get more than the guy that got this, so that's why he's looking at, I need more than 230 million.
Yeah, well, even Daniel Jones is asking for like an insane amount of money for, and
Yeah.
he's done nothing.
Yep.
But
Exactly.
that's crazy.
But you look at numbers wise and everything. That's where everybody goes up. My numbers are the same as his or better than his. I should get more than him, and that's what it's going to be every year. And the number is going to get crazier and crazier.
So you play a couple more years in Dallas, and you
Yep.
great seasons. 2000 and 2008, you play all 16 games again. You actually had more tackles,
Yeah.
less interceptions, but more tackles. Have a great campaign. 2009, you played 12 of 16 games. Did you get injured or?
Yeah. I got caught with some friendly fire. My own teammate.
Oh,
my own teammate. My own teammate. I shoot the gap and make a tackle on the running back, and my teammate, the linebacker, he runs in there blind, and instead of hitting anybody else, he hits me and he hits my ankle. I get a high ankle
oh
sprain.
God.
Yeah.
Oh, and a high ankle sprain,
So
of course. Jeez, those are
yeah.
the worst.
Oh no. It's yeah. So me and that it was a Green Bay game. Actually, me and Mark Colombo, the offensive lineman, um, got similar injuries. Actually, he broke his ankle, and I sprained my high ankle. And they actually say that his is better off than mine, because it's almost better to break it than to actually just have a high ankle sprain. So,
Yeah, high ankle sprains are the worst.
oh, it's terrible.
Well,
So
that's
yeah, I
what
ended up.
killed Ratliff's career. The defensive tackle
Yeah.
for the Cowboys was
Yep.
that he had a couple
Yep.
high ankle sprains. So and then so
Yep.
you go to Baltimore for I guess like half a year in 2010. And then
When I finished in Indianapolis.
Bliss, yeah. Um, but yeah, and then I guess you had a playoff
Yeah, I had
game
two
in
two
Indianapolis, right?
in Indianapolis. Yep. Yep. That was. I mean, it was a good little run that we had. I was able to come in there, and within a week, I was on the field, and then ended up starting the game, whatever, in the playoffs. So it was a good one.
Then you call it a career after that. Was it injuries, or you just did you decide to hang it up, or what was the?
Yeah, I had a feeling probably the year that, like, early on in that year, and then that right after that season, that's when we had the lockout, and
Mhm.
that sort of solidified it a little bit for me. And I really felt like it was time to move on. And then of course the league was going more into the whole, safety, uh, role of not allowing. That's when, they started making a lot of the changes with hits and everything like that. So it just seemed like the right time to move on.
Yeah. Great career, Gil Ken. Soon, great career.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, just wish I could have got to see you play longer, but I'm not a Cowboys fan, but I've lived here the last 20 plus years, and so I've got to see a lot of great Cowboys play, and you were always a great one to watch. So
I
great
appreciate it.
career. But got a last couple of questions here to conclude our conversation tonight. Again, Ken, thank you so much for all your time. Really excited for the arrival. The new cigars coming out. So much to look forward to.
Yes, sir.
You kind of talked a little bit about this maybe a second ago with when you were smoking that cigar that Eladio gave you. But this is our Asylum moment, which is brought to you by Asylum Cigars. Refuge is more than just a physical place. It can be a state of mind. Some of life's greatest reflections can be found in our own personal asylum. So moments like these were made for Asylum Cigars. So light up an asylum and choose your refuge. So this segment is about the cigar, or the moment where it's just you and the cigar. You know, a lot, this is a very community driven industry, obviously. Your time at Pro Cigar, you know, time at IPCPR, now PCAs, where your time's in the shops, where you're around people a lot, smoking cigars. And that's what this industry is great for. But every so often we get to experience a moment where it's just the cigar and us, you know, just ourselves. What's a moment that you can remember? And I'm sure you've had several of these over the years, but what's a moment that you can remember where you were smoking a cigar and it was just about the moment? What was the cigar, if you can recall, and what was that moment about?
I think the first one that sort of quickly popped in my mind, I talked about earlier, is that Oro Blanco, and being gifted it. Actually, one of my friends, the guy Dave, that I'm going to Switzerland with at the end of this month. We were the day before, we were talking in the shop, and I don't know how we got on the conversation of Oro Blanco, but he asked me, have I had one? And I was like, no, I haven't had one. You know, haven't had the opportunity, or just haven't thought to. And I told him, I said, I bought like $500 worth of cigars. I just haven't bought one cigar that was $500. And so the next day we were playing in a golf tournament, and we get in the golf cart, and he pulls out his bag and he grabs the cigar. He's like, here. He said, you can smoke it now, or, you know, if you want, or you can smoke later. And I told him, I said, look, I'm not smoking this on the golf course. Like, that's not happening. Like, so
Travesty.
oh my goodness. I wouldn't have golfed. I'd have been in the cart the whole time, whatever. It'd have been terrible. So I remember I was actually going to Vegas in the following week, and I was at 8 Lounge. And they had an event later on that afternoon, but I actually got there early. I went on the patio by myself. I sat in the corner by myself, and I really just made it about this. Like, I'm going to smoke this and really just enjoy it. I smoked it down to the nub. I mean, it was, I mean, the experience was amazing. And it, you know, I love those type of moments when you can really dive into, you know, like you said, like that sort of interaction and that relationship with that cigar in that moment. And I would say that was one that stuck with me, just because of the whole myth behind the cigar, being able to get the story, the backstory from the creator himself. It made it even more special, because now I can sort of take those moments that he was talking about and sort of almost picture it while I'm smoking that cigar. Another one I would say is, you know, after I did that first bundle of the Arrival, and I got home and smoked one right here, you know, just sitting back by myself, whatever. And after having that quick moment with Manny in his office, I was able to actually just sit back, whatever, and really say, you know what, like, it's happening. Like, and take that moment of understanding that the thought process of the possibility of having a cigar, and then the process of actually going through creating the cigar, has led to this moment right here. And I could feel that in that at that moment, I could sort of feel that, you know what, this is, you know, the next time, whatever, it's like we're going to be putting them in other people's hands. Like, I'm going to be, you know, actually being able to say, hey, this is my cigar, and give it to somebody and have them try it, and have that moment of seeing what they think about it. So that sort of moment just gave me sort of chills of, you know, what was to come. So that was a whole nother experience that was more personal, because I knew this was something that I was you know, responsible for.
We talk about these moments where throughout tonight's conversation, you talked about these moments where people have handed you cigars in that moment, right? Like you were talking about, and now the tables have turned. You get to do now you get to do the gifting, and I think that's a really cool full circle moment for you. That's just really awesome. Well, awesome. Well, that was our asylum moment. This is our last question of the night. Ken, I looked down at our clock. I can't believe how long we've been talking. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this time. I'm unbelievably grateful. I know as a professional athlete, you know, you're used to interviews being 15, 20 minutes long. And, you know, here we are more than a couple hours into this. And for you to give me this time, thank you.
When you enjoy yourself, I mean, time flies. So we're good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So our final question of the night is always our curveball segment, which is brought to you by Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. Fastballs or curveballs, it doesn't matter. Since the company's inception, Steve Saka has been knocking them out of the park. 8 consecutive years. Count them up. 8 consecutive years in the consensus top 3. Congratulations to our good friend, Mr. Steve Saka. So again, this is our last question of the night. It's meant to be kind of fun and everything. I heard this question. I can't tell you where, just I think it was like on an Instagram reel or something like that. And I didn't actually know who was asking it, and I didn't know who they were asking. But I was like, this is a question I want to ask somebody. And as I was thinking over the last couple of weeks, I was like, I want to ask Ken Hamlin this question because I think I'm really interested to hear the answer from you because you've had a incredible life so far. You're still a young man.
Yeah.
And you've had a lot of trials and tribulations, as we've talked about just a couple of them tonight.
Yeah.
You have children now, as I do. So I just thought this would be a great question to ask you. So here it is. What's a time in your life that you wish that had been video recorded so that you could share it, and who would you share it with?
Oh. A time in my life that was video recorded.
That you wish had been video recorded so that
And
you could share
that,
yeah, that you could share it now, and
Oh.
who would you share it with?
You know what I would say, and this is crazy that it wasn't videotaped, whatever, but so the day that I got drafted, and it for multiple reasons. I think it shows the family ties and how tight, like my family that I had around me was. At the same time, certain accomplishments. When you think about all of the things, from childhood to, school and everything, college and things, all the different roadblocks and everything that I've had to, really go through and endure. That moment of everything that you sort of worked for, everything that you put up with, everything that you had to deal with, came to this moment of this is what it was for. And really seeing, and then seeing like, my mom and her like visual and the feeling of sort of respect and appreciation and just, being proud. My brothers, my sister, and how proud they were of me, and understanding what I had been through, understanding what I've done to get to this moment. I think it all built up for that moment, and to be able to sort of capture that, and then of course I would have loved to be able to show that to my kids, so they can sort of see, and if we could sort of put that in pieces of the build up and then the actual accomplishment would have been great. So they can see the hard work that it takes to accomplish certain things. The sort of no quit and no give up attitude, to understand that you can go through hard times and still come up on top.
Yeah.
I think that is, especially in this day and age where, so much is given, to our kids and to kids in general.
Sure.
To understand what you need to what you need to do to really, put your head down and just go get something that you really want. That would have been a moment that, and moments that I would have loved to have been captured and be able to sort of share with my kids and share with just smaller individuals, younger kids around me, so they can understand that it doesn't matter where you're at. Fraser wasn't a highly touted football community. The school, we weren't pushing out a whole bunch of college, athletes and NFL players. To this date, I think I'm the only NFL player that's come out of Fraser. But you can still make it.
Yeah.
And just to sort of let them understand that regardless of what your situation is, it still boils down to you and the decision that you make that you want to do it. Doesn't matter anything else around it, whatever. You can sit there and still be in the roughest situation and still make it out. And I think that right there could be a point for a lot of different kids to sort of see and to understand that they don't have to just soak in and really just die and let their dreams die because of their situations around them. They can still keep those dreams and definitely accomplish them.
Yeah, you can sit on the bench. You can, you can spend your lunch hour playing chess. You can,
yeah.
You can come from a smaller school and you can make it. It's the work that you put in. Unbelievable. That's awesome. That's awesome, Ken. Thank you so much again for your time tonight. Thank you to our audience as well for staying up late with us as always and catching this live. If you're catching our shows live, it's always on our Facebook page, Fumar. You can always check us out every Sunday night at 9:30 Central. We have some great shows coming up in the next couple of weeks, and definitely don't want to miss those. We've got some great guests coming up, and starting with next week, we've got Howard Gums of Howard G Cigars will be returning to. Yeah, he'll be returning to. This will be the second time I've had him on my show. I love Howard, and he's got a great story as well. And really looking forward to talking to him about some of the stuff that's coming from Howard G Cigars next week. But you can check us out wherever on our YouTube channel as well, Ellis Fumar. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, y'all. And if you are listening to us later, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can do that wherever you find a podcast, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, or wherever you listen to podcasts, including iHeartRadio. Just hit the download, subscribe, and review button. If you are a subscriber, do me a favor, hit unsubscribe. But don't forget to hit resubscribe because that helps my numbers so that I can get great guests like Ken Hamlin whenever I want. So thanks to everyone, all those likes, shares, and comments. Keep them coming. This was our 243rd take. It's my pleasure tonight to bring Ken and to have a great conversation with him. So for everyone out there, live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star studio of Azle, Texas, I'm your host, Bear Duplessis, as always. And guess what, everybody? We'll see you next time.